Goodbye, my sons! Remember me! France has fallen! Though I love you all, I cannot embrace you all. So remember me!
I can't believe my ears.
You all stand before me waving a piece of paper, crying, abdicate, abdicate.
I will not! I will not!
In many ways, Napoleon Bonaparte was the 19th century. He embodied all these rising trends, whether we're talking about romanticism, individualism, nationalism, liberalism, meritocracy, all those rising 19th century beliefs. Napoleon Bonaparte encapsulated them in his person, in his persona. When you talk about romanticism, who's a more romantic figure than Napoleon Bonaparte? This Corsican, this random freedom fighter from Corsica who becomes the emperor, who crowns himself emperor, who rises above the world and is remembered by all of history for fame and grandeur, and then falls in a tragic demise. And of course, right now you can hear Amour Plastique playing in your head. You can hear There's Nothing We Can Do. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. When you talk about individualism, who's more of an individual than Napoleon? He was not interested in being a cog in the machine. He was not interested in being part of a collective. He wanted to be remembered by history as a man, as an individual, as Napoleon himself. Nobody was more invested in the ego, the self, than Napoleon Bonaparte. If you talk about liberalism, his Napoleonic Code codified so many of the liberal reforms of the French Revolution. And I'm saying liberal in the sense of, laissez-faire economics, free speech, things like that, freedom, liberty. He embodied that movement because he believed in that. If you talk about meritocracy, again, he's just a Corsican. He's just this random guy from Corsica, but because of his work ethic, because of his strength of character and his inner greatness, he rose to the highest position in all of France. He's more famous than all of the French kings who inherited their greatness and their status. Napoleon outshines all of them as this rising star. Napoleon was able to synthesize meritocracy with aristocracy. He was able to create a meritocratic aristocracy, the new aristocracy based on greatness and on wealth rather than just on birth. Because before the French Revolution, a lot of the aristocrats weren't even rich. A lot of them were dirt poor, and they just had inherited the title because their great-great-great-great-grandfather was a great man. Well, okay, greatness is genetic to some extent, but clearly some of these guys were not living up to that. And so every once in a while, you have to reset the aristocracy. You have to introduce fresh blood. You have to have the nouveau riche. You have to get rid of the people who no longer are living up to their ancestors. And that's exactly what Napoleon believed in. He believed in the bourgeois aristocracy. To some of you, that idea might not make any sense. How can you have meritocratic aristocracy? Isn't aristocracy just when rich guys pass all the power to their kids? Well, kind of, but if you look at the root word, it's aristoi kratos, which means rule of the best. And sometimes the best is not strictly hereditary. It does pass along through the bloodline. I mean, I've made videos about this before. IQ and character does pass along genetically, but as I was saying earlier, it has to be reset because sometimes those bloodlines decline. So the aristocracy shouldn't be this static thing that just persists through the centuries. It should be an open membership club into which people can rise through greatness, into which people can rise through being very successful, very intelligent. But the big question with Napoleon, and grad schools, if you go to history grad school, they'll have you write essays on this. It's one of the perennial historian questions is, did Napoleon inherit the French Revolution? Did he continue the legacy of that revolution? And it's a little more complicated than you might think because the initial naive answer is just no, of course not, because the French Revolution was about equality and Napoleon didn't believe in equality. He crowned himself emperor. He went backwards. He went back to the ancien regime. And this is actually what Nietzsche says. Nietzsche says that Napoleon saved France from the revolution, that Napoleon was a man with an ancient soul, a man from an ancient age, from the Homeric age. And yeah, there's some truth to that. I mean, I'm not going to say Nietzsche's totally wrong. How could I? That would be blasphemy. But there is another side to that coin, because Napoleon didn't go all the way back. He didn't just say, okay, now we're going to have all those old laws. We're going to have the Catholic Church in the same status as before. No, he didn't. He kept liberal reforms. He kept a more laissez-faire economy. He kept a more free and open republic. And that's good. Those are good things. His project, the Napoleonic Code, was good. It was good for the people he imposed it upon. He truly believed that imposing laissez-faire economics and liberal government and aristocratic and meritocratic bourgeois aristocracy on all of Europe would help them and would make Europe a more grand, noble, wonderful, beautiful place. Imagine Europe if World War I had never happened, right? Because the impetus for World War I was sort of this conflict between democracy, symbolized by America, right? Mass democracy, and the Austrian regime, symbolized by the powers of Austria and Germany. What if the Napoleonic synthesis had happened and you had been able to have the good parts from the Austrian regime and the good parts from the new democratic nations combined into Bonapartism, into meritocratic, aristocratic liberalism? And what if you had just had that ruling all of Europe? There wouldn't have been a need for this violent conflict between the old and the new. They would have married. They would have come together and kissed, and it would have been beautiful, and Europe would be the mistress of the world. Napoleon just was a great man. I don't think anybody can deny that. These idiots who deny the great man theory of history, they just don't know what they're talking about. Sorry, history really is determined by these grand, magnificent, romantic figures who rise up and change the world according to their vision, and that's cool. Whether that's good or bad, does that really matter? What matters is that it's cool, that it's beautiful. It makes a good story. Nietzsche talks about this in one of his very early essays. He talks about the distinction between history as it's practiced by the antiquarian, who just wants to know about old stuff, versus history as practiced as monumental history, right? He says that great men don't just see history as an interesting record of things that have happened. Great men see history as a source of inspiration. Great men see history and go, I want to be like that. Oh, I will avoid the downfall of Cesare Borgia. I will avoid the downfall of Julius Caesar, and I will be even greater than them. You look at Plutarch's Lives. The purpose of that book is not just for antiquarian interest. It's to say, hey, look at these great men. Look at their strengths and their weaknesses. Look at how they failed and how they succeeded, and learn from it. Plutarch is very open about his biases. He says, yeah, Cato the Elder, kind of a stingy loser. He freaking sold his animals when they got too old. He sold his slaves when they got too old. He had no idea of affection or magnanimity. And he says, about Pericles, he's like, yeah, Pericles did some good things, but he was a demagogue. And so history in classical great civilization was seen as something you learn from so that you can mold the future. And that is the aristocratic view of history. Machiavelli, when he's studying history, when he's in his little cell, right? He spent the whole day in exile working on the farm. He's all muddy. When he comes into his house after dinner, takes off the muddy clothes, dons royal garments, and retreats into his study to read Livy and Polybius and Aristotle. He's not just doing that out of interest. He's doing that to learn from it. He wants to know, what did Cesare Borgia do wrong? How can I do better? What is the secret to gaining and maintaining power and glory? That is the great man theory of history, is you study these individuals who have shaped the course of the world. And the alternative, by the way, is Marxist. The alternative is historical materialism, where you say that ideas don't matter, and then it's all just about these economic forces shifting the masses around. There's a really good scene in Darkness at Noon where the communist is explaining his view of history, and he's like, yeah, the right-wing history just focuses on the upper layer, but we dive down into the mud. We dive down into the deep black bedrock of humanity, into the thousands and thousands and thousands of nameless peasants, and we show how they are the true force moving history. No, sorry, the thousands and thousands and thousands of nameless peasants didn't do much. Who really did much was those people on the top, those great men, the aristocrats of the soul, the people who took history by the horns and grappled with it. Sometimes when I talk about this kind of stuff, with the Nietzsche philosophy, it can come across as kind of larpy, because that's not fundamentally my personality. I will readily acknowledge I'm not one of these great men. I'm just a hobbit. I just want to read my little books and take my little walks and be left alone. We want a great man, not just because, whoa, he's so cool. We want him for really practical reasons, because those great men will make our lives better. If Napoleon was in charge right now, so much, it would be like Doge, but actually it works. He would cut out so much waste, because great men don't like waste. Great men don't like stupid redundancy. Great men like innovation, speed, efficiency, beauty. They like what is lean, what work. And again, I want to repeat, Napoleon is not about returning to the ancient regime. It's not about turning back the clock and going to medieval Europe. It's about moving forward. Bonapartist Futurism. But of course, the big question with Napoleon is, okay, sure, maybe his political philosophy was brilliant. Maybe his laws, the Napoleonic Code, really would have made life better for all of Europe. Maybe that's true. But was it worth the wars? Was it worth all those European boys being killed at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20? Was it worth all that destruction, bloodshed, the loss of property, the damage to European culture? Was it worth it? And that's a good question. Because on the one hand, if I was a Frenchman at this time, right? If I was a 19-year-old French soldier, no, I don't want to die so that there can be a better law code in Italy. I don't want to die so that we can make life better for the future of Europe. I don't care about the future. I care about now. I want to live my life. I don't want to get shot in frickin' Alsace-Lorraine. But on the other hand, imagine a world where Napoleon won the war and where all of Europe was ruled by this sort of laissez-faire bourgeois aristocracy. Imagine 100 years from then, when World War I didn't happen, when all the progress and innovation and cultural flourishing that came from Napoleon's system has panned out. Imagine looking back now. Yeah, of course it was worth it. Of course all that destruction and bloodshed, it was terrible, but it was worth it. That's also a valid perspective. How do you weigh those two? Of course, in real life, Napoleon didn't win the war. He failed, but he didn't know he was going to fail. From Napoleon's perspective, it was worth the shot, I think. It was worth, hey, we're going to risk all this destruction, but the reward, the potential reward, is centuries and centuries of a better system, a stronger, more beautiful, more prosperous Europe. To me, the analogy that comes to mind is the American Revolution. I think about this a lot. Was the revolution worth it? Looking back now, I'm glad that America's free. I think it's good that we're not a British colony anymore. I don't think we're that much dumber than the British that we need to be colonized. I think it makes sense for us to have regional, local autonomy. But if I was a lad who lived during the Revolutionary War, I would not want to fight. I would not want there to be a war. I would not want to risk my house getting blown up by a cannonball. I would not want to risk my mom getting shot. I wouldn't want to risk my farm being burned. So that's always the question with these sort of things, is war ever worth it? Because from the perspective of the soldiers, no, of course not. But from the perspective of those of us in the future who have benefited from the good guys winning, I don't know. That's a philosophical question that I'm not prepared to answer. Both sides are valid. I can understand both perspectives. These are exciting times. The channel is growing. People are waking up. The masses are becoming Arthur Greenwood pilled. But we still have a long way to go. My last channel was demonetized, and they might do the exact same thing to this one. So if you like what I do and you want to help me out, if you want to help my channel grow, there are 4 things you can do. 1, leave a comment. Just say anything, literally anything, and that will be a huge help for the algorithm. 2, send the video to a friend. I know you have some normie friend who needs to hear this. 4, most importantly, consider joining my Patreon. You'll get access to the Arthur Greenwood archive, where you can watch my really controversial videos that I can't put on YouTube, including my really old videos from when I was like a democratic Vaushite socialist. There's even the hour-long debate I had about anarcho-capitalism. You'll also get to join our members-only Discord server, where you can talk with me and the boys about life and politics and history. It's a great time. We have weekly phone calls, and I have genuinely become really good friends with some of the guys in the server. Because we have to stick together, It's rough out there. We need networks of highly disciplined, highly intelligent men. If you want to join my network, all it costs is $1 a month. That adds up to $12 a year, which is nothing. That's less than an hour of work. And in exchange, you get to be my friend forever. All right, and now it's time for me to thank all my loyal Bonapartists. Jawad Issa, Francis Webb, Nihilus is here, Nick, Atlas Rise, Donkus Kebab, Total Nicked Elmo, Philip von Filbert, King Crypto, Edraj, Maxim, Sun Tzu, Larry O'Cannon, Mount Maxito, Eric DeMallet, Rodney, Hossboss, Brandon, Voidborn, Danis the Manus, Seb, Texan Tetra, Jake, Mark, Samarkand19er, Ryrot, Lucaso, Bill, Aiden the Astronaut, Carter, Baseballgarian, Temp, Medi, Lucas, GPC, Ben, Karthik, Piedar, Frank, Woodson, Benjamin, Wesley, Dan, Honorary A, Bennett, Christian, Conchanock, TDW, Curious Leftist, Reed O'Brien, Macaroni, AA Gaming, Deez, Mughal, NSA Watchlist Bait, The Fiery One, Nightcore Lion, Michael, Missing Person, Kozer98, Trigon, Techno Faustian, Rock Bullet, Half Buckeye, Vincius Neves, Will Lawton, Jax GM, Killian. Thank you guys so much. I would be destitute and homeless living under a bridge if it wasn't for you guys. Thank you so much. Love you all. Mwah. Everybody click and watch this video right now, and I'll see you there. God bless America.